Yuki Tsunoda. Many know him as an F1 driver from Japan, the only Japanese on the grid. We know him as an F1 driver from Japan who just can't stop swearing. Seriously, have you ever heard him on the radio? In today's video, we're going to talk about how Tsunoda has another year left to prove that he belongs in F1. So make sure to stay until the end of the video to learn all about it. First up, just one more year. Let's just say that Tsunoda isn't having the best of times in Formula 1. His first 2 seasons haven't really been that great, and Red Bull and AlphaTauri aren't really short of options, so he's clearly on very thin ice. Before, our expectations were quite high, but the past 2 years have shown him being beaten pretty much constantly by his teammate Pierre Gasly. Next season, he'll be up against Nick de Vries, who also happens to be an amazing driver. So, it's all going to depend on the 2023 season. If he can do well, he's good to go. If he doesn't, Red Bull's sister team might start looking elsewhere. And the thing is, he might not even have all of the season. As we all know, F1's silly season begins during the summer break. That's only halfway through, so he may want to have a really good start. In 2021, he was super promising. The only problem with him was that he was kinda unprepared. That's all. He wasn't experienced enough to be good at the pinnacle of motorsport, but his past couple of seasons has shown us that experience might not be the only issue. After only 2 seasons in F3 and F2, Yuki was moved to F1 with AlphaTauri. This was his chance to show the world what he was made of. He struggled quite a lot in 2021, but the struggle didn't stop next year either. In fact, things only got worse. He ended 21 in 14th place with 32 points, and in 22, he ended in 17th place with only 12 points. Up next, he could have lost it all. Do you know what saved him this time around? F1's licensing rules, because that meant that AlphaTauri couldn't sign Colton Herta, their top choice. Here's another thing that saved him: Pierre Gasly, because not being able to sign Herta and Gasly walking away meant that they were actually short of drivers. Ideally, they'd actually prefer Herta Gasly, de Vries Gasly, or Herta de Vries instead of having Yuki on the team, but they didn't have a choice, and one man's bad luck, Herta's, became another man's treasure, Tsunoda. So Tsunoda now gets one more year. Just one. This is something that's not been seen before, because Red Bull really doesn't have much patience when it comes to their drivers. We mean, it was them that brought Alex Albon from F2 to Red Bull, with just half a season at the Toro Rosso program, AlphaTauri's previous name. And yet, with just 2 seasons, he was let go. He wasn't deemed good enough, and so we don't know how Yuki got this lucky, but he better make the most of it. But Yuki isn't the most experienced of folks out there, especially when it comes to Europe, so maybe this is the chance he needs. This is what will show the rest of us that he belongs in F1, and, more importantly, it'll show us that he belongs in the Red Bull ecosystem. Or maybe they just did it because, well, they didn't have any good options lying around, and they couldn't enter the car. But the point of it all is, Yuki has been given another chance, and he must do whatever it takes to take it and secure his place in Formula 1. Next up, how did we get here? Tsunoda's career started in 2016. This is when he started racing in the Japanese domestic series F4. He finished 3rd in his first full-time season, and the next, he won the championship. He had 7 wins that season, and this is exactly what put him on the track to F1. Now let's not forget something. Tsunoda's Japanese, so is Honda, and Honda is the engine supplier for Red Bull, so the company's strong ties with the team meant that he entered their system in 2019. That year, he finished 9th in the F3 championship. Nothing too impressive, to be honest. In 2020, he was promoted to F3. As a rookie, he came 3rd, which was more than impressive. He even scored 4 poles, and was well in the race for the championship until losing out to Mick Schumacher. Anyway, Honda and Red Bull split, but Tsunoda stayed. If it doesn't go too well, he's going to soon be forgotten, and, to be honest, it'll be a little sad. Moving on, how did 2022 go? So here's what's up. In 2021, he wasn't near Gasly, but in 2022, he was a lot more competitive when compared to Pierre. The problem is, though, the AlphaTauri car suffered a bit. This means that his overall performance was worse, but considering if Pierre's performance remained equal, Tsunoda did improve. The numbers, though, the numbers aren't really the best. Last year, he had 7-point finishes. This year, he's only had 4-point finishes, so he didn't score in most of the races. But as we mentioned, compared to Gasly, his season did improve. For example, last year, Tsunoda was out-qualified by Pierre in 21 races out of 22. This year, the number has dropped well below 13 out of 21. Gasly had amazing points last year, 110. That's thrice Tsunoda's points from the same season. But this time around, he scored half as many points as Gasly. Look, The truth is, Gasly's better, but that's because he's a lot more experienced. So while of course, he hasn't caught up to Pierre, he's close. So that's a marked improvement. If he keeps up this pace for next year too, then he's definitely going to have a chance to stay with the team. He does need to kinda be close to De Vries, if not beat him completely in the Drivers' Championship. Now, for his 2023 goals. Folks, while he's made progress, the truth is that it's not enough. Like, come on, half the points as his teammate is only impressive to us right now because he scored even less last year. That's all. But if he really wants to stay in the sport, he's going to need to be a much stronger driver. Just how Gasly has become before he was asked to replace Fernando Alonso. Like, come on, he's literally being asked to replace a former world champion. If that doesn't speak talent, then what does? So now, he's going to need to score more points, and consistently. He's also going to have to be in Q3 more often, and of course, be close to Nick. The last part isn't going to be easy whatsoever though, because De Vries has been racing one way or the other, and he has a lot more experience in general, as compared to Yuki. So that's going to be one difficult task. And even with just one race in 2023, he ended up scoring points in a freaking Williams, for crying out loud. So if he can stay competitive, he's gonna be in F1. If not, he's gonna want to start looking for other opportunities. Let's talk about what a successful season for Yuki should look like. Well, as of right now, Tsunoda should only care about one thing, and one thing only: whether he gets to keep a spot on the grid. So in that case, a successful season will be the one in which he can convince Red Bull that he's better than anyone and everyone they're thinking of replacing him with. Or he needs to convince another team that he's most definitely worth the investment, and that he'd be a darn good driver, just like Pierre did with Alpine. Following up the F1 teammate battle that went to waste. Pierre led in 2022, and he led in 2021, and he would have led in 2023 if he stayed, but Tsunoda closed the gap as we talked about. And while the competition between the two was fun, the problem was that the results were difficult to come by, considering the problems with AlphaTauri's car, the AT03, and of course, the reliability problems as well. Gasly had a really strong season in 2021, so expectations were high in 2022, but this time around, it was a whole other story. That doesn't mean he's not talented, but he just couldn't live up to the expectations thanks to the car. The team's aerodynamic development this year was less than stellar. The front end was weak in slow corners, and if you paid attention to the radio, you could hear Pierre complaining about the corner entry understeer, the same thing that would transition into oversteer the very next corner. And at times, we saw Tsunoda doing better with this. Tsunoda had issues producing a consistent pace. He really needed to improve his tire management too. This time around, AT's best score was 5th in Azerbaijan. This was, of course, achieved by Pierre Gasly. Tsunoda should have been 6th, but he suffered a DRS problem. In Monaco, Pierre was doing well, and he wasn't at fault for the pit wall error either. If that didn't happen, he would have the pace to be just behind Ferrari and Red Bull. And then that, mixed with the MGUK problems in Bahrain, the collision in Miami, and the horribly timed pit stop in Singapore, all denied him of good points. Finishing up, errors after errors. Gasly also lost his edge in the end once his move to Alpine was done, but he also did have to deal with the kind of car that just wasn't as good as his rivals. The others developed over time, whereas AlphaTauri was just stuck in the past. Tsunoda too had more than his fair share of problems throughout the entire season, and while he did stop making the kind of stupid mistakes he did in 2021, they still happened. He even crashed after pitting in Singapore. Anyway, Gasly's move to Alpine has been a blow for AlphaTauri. This is when Tsunoda needs to step in and take charge. He needs to do well, not just for his future, but for the future of his team. All he now needs to do is add consistency, and he needs a ton of focus if he's ever going to fill in Gasly's shoes. That's a wrap for this video. Do you guys think Tsunoda is going to have a good 2023 season? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.